bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the rad groups of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more. All featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL. From the great one to the next one. From the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of THW Oilers Overtime with the HockeyWriters.com. My name is Jim Parsons, here as always with Colton Pankiw. Had a couple little technical difficulties, but I think we're good now. So if he all of a sudden stops moving, you'll know why. Colton, how are you today?
Good, yeah. I think we got those all figured out. And yeah, it's been a little while since we've chatted. Obviously, the Oilers have been playing a lot better since the last time. So yeah, doing pretty good.
Yeah, and you know what? We picked an interesting week because they only have 2 games this week. So it's not like we got a ton of action to talk about as people watch this. They're going to be playing tonight against the Columbus Blue Jackets, which will be the 7th in a row if they can win it, which will be huge for them. That moves them right up the Pacific Division standings. They're just outside of Seattle, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles right now, holding the wild card spot. Could have a chance with the pretty good schedule here to move up and compete for the top spot here. So let's start with that. Like, how are they playing to you? Last time we talked, that it was hits and misses and a little bit of inconsistency, but the goaltending's picked itself up. The defense is playing a lot better. They've got Evander Kane back, and depth scoring is kicking in here. What are you thinking when you watch this team?
I think it does. Goaltending obviously helps quite a bit. Obviously, we've talked enough about Campbell's struggles earlier in the year, and not that he's maybe been phenomenal in this stretch, but he's certainly been a lot better, and he's playing well. He's making all the saves he has to. I think he's kind of giving the team in front of him confidence, which was especially huge when Skinner had missed a few games there. So I think everything's clicking right now, and then obviously having Evander Kane back these past few games in the lineup has helped too. So yeah, obviously things are just clicking right now, and it's starting to get really tight in the Pacific. So pretty exciting down the final stretch here.
Yeah, it's really nice that they've got 2 goaltenders who are playing really well. Like, there was a Stuart Skinner obviously left the team so that he could be with his wife for the birth of their first child, and then came back, and Jack Campbell was playing so well that they didn't actually put Skinner in the lineup. So I kind of felt bad for Skinner. In fact, on 2 occasions, we'll talk about this one in a minute too, because he's selected for the All-Star game, which is great, and I'm sure he's super excited about it. But I'm also sure he's probably like, man, I was kind of really looking forward to having this break so I go home and spend the time with my new family. But he's not going to get the chance to do that for fantastic reasons. He's an all-star. But having 2 goaltenders playing really, really well right now is a fantastic luxury for the Oilers to have. It's perfect timing. There's a lot of things going right in Edmonton right now. What would you say is probably, goaltending aside, what's the biggest plus, like the thing that you've noticed the most where you're kind of like, wow, this is really clicking right now. Like, this is a good trend for the Oilers to be on.
I think just overall team chemistry. Like, I think we talked about it last time, and you'd seen some things like that one Flames game kind of over the Christmas break there where Weegar had took that run at McDavid and there was no response. And since then, you've seen like tons of these games. That one against Tampa the other night really felt like a playoff type game where guys on both teams were kind of stepping up for their teammates. Like, you've seen a bunch of fights and everything. So I think just guys really kind of wanting to win for each other, battling for each other. I think it just feels a lot more positive. You're not kind of seeing that negative body language, even just watching on TV. If they get scored on, it's not kind of the, oh, here we go again feeling that it kind of had been throughout the first half. So it kind of seems like they're really getting rolling now. We've kind of talked about how they struggled to play a full 60 at times. It seems like they know that they're good enough to get back in games. And now, kind of similar to last season, kind of later in the year, they're starting to put it together and just hoping now that they can continue that for the final 30 some odd games they have left.
Yeah, there's a lot of positives here. Like, you're right. The team chemistry, the physicality is there. Clean Costin, Vincent Desharnais, Evander Kane back in the lineup. There are people who are willing to throw down. There are people who are willing to hit. I've really liked the fact that the Oilers have been good at holding third period leads. They've been a pretty good third period team in terms of scoring an offensive punch. I think their goal differential is really high, but they have always sort of allowed goals against them too. So you never really know. You think they can outscore their problems, but they've been shutting teams down, which is really important. Like, the fast starts are good, but like the third periods where they're just like limiting shots to 6, 7, less than 10 shots in a third period. I think that's huge. Like, when you've got these teams on the ropes and you're able to just shut it down and make sure they don't come back. I think that's really important. What do you make of Stuart Skinner being an all-star? Are you surprised by that?
I was very surprised. I mean, not that I don't think he's deserving. Obviously, we talked about like the really impressive first half he had, especially kind of picking it up when Campbell was struggling. But yeah, it's definitely not something I was expecting to see. Obviously, Draisaitl, you kind of figured, and then maybe even Nugent Hopkins. But yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of funny now too. Like we were just saying with Campbell getting all the starts, it's almost like the guy who isn't playing anymore is the one going to the game. It's a little different, but obviously shows the support that Oilers fans have for their players.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like the fact that you could legitimately argue that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins should absolutely be there. Zach Hyman is having a career year. He's already got 2 more points than he did all of last season. And last season, he set a new high with the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, he's been fantastic. Like he's been so good. Like in any other year, that guy's an all-star, right? Like it's just so happens that Stuart Skinner is a rookie, has played really, really well. His numbers are solid. I have a lot of faith in what Stuart Skinner is going to be. I have no idea if he'll ever go back to the All-Star game. Let's hope he's that good, that he's a regular All-Star, but I am really excited for him. But it is hard to just look at this team with all the players that have done, the 5 guys for sure, and go, man, how do you leave Hyman and Nugent Hopkins off this team? But I guess every team's going to have a couple players like that. Yeah. But both of those guys could absolutely have gone, and I wouldn't have at all been surprised. Nugent Hopkins, let's talk a little bit about Hyman, because he has been really, really good. I think he's had 4 or 5 goals and 5 assists or 4 assists in the last 9 games. Like he's been on fire. It's just amazing how much they're using him, how solid he's been. And he said 2 or 3, maybe 4 goals taken away this season, ones that haven't counted, that would have put him, he's almost at 30 goals if those things count. So what are you making of the way that he's playing? Like, can he continue this?
I mean, I think so. I don't know if he'll ever, he might cool off a bit points wise down the stretch of the season. I don't think he's ever going to be a huge offensive producer. That said, he's over a point per game this year. But yeah, I think just he continues to grow on me kind of game after game. It's not just the points with him. Like we've talked about it. It's just every shift. There's not a guy that's going to outcompete him on the ice. He wins all those battles. He sticks up for teammates. He's just an extremely likable guy kind of on and off the ice too. And I think fans have really grown to like him. He's really kind of turned into a fan favorite in the season and a half he's been in Edmonton. So, and I know you're a big fan too. So yeah, I'm just really excited of what I've seen so far. And again, I was kind of hesitant when that contract was signed, and he's proven me more and more wrong by the day, because yeah, he's just so much better of a player than I originally gave him credit for.
Yeah, no, I know my son was asking about jerseys this year for Christmas and wasn't sure which one he wanted to get. And he says, hey, I'm going to get a Hyman jersey. And I was like, perfect. It's not ever going to be one that you're going to regret getting. Even if he sort of regresses here over the last couple of years of that contract, it still looks like a deal. And the people in Toronto right now, especially those who said, oh man, you overpaid Zach Hyman so badly, they're probably looking at this going, oh my gosh, I can't believe we let that dude walk away. He's just been really, really solid for the Oilers the moment he arrived, and he just seems to be clicking better, fitting in, knowing his role, standing. He's like a Ryan Smith-ish, right? He just stands there and takes a beating, even though the beatings aren't what they used to be. It's still a difficult job, and he doesn't seem to be bothered by it at all. How big is Evander Kane now? As this airs, people are going to probably learn that Evander Kane does not look to be playing tonight against the Columbus Blue Jackets. It's not an injury situation for anybody who is worried and doesn't know the story. It doesn't have anything to do with his wrist or the cut that he suffered or the rehab that he was going through. It is all about the bankruptcy filings and those things that he's taking care of personal matters in that regard and making sure that's all good. There was a question mark. He might have been able to play on Wednesday night. So it doesn't look like this is going to be a long-term absence thing, but he missed a couple practices. He's probably not playing against Columbus. That said, how solid has Kane been? He hasn't scored, but he's put up a number of shots and he's played a number of ways. How solid has he been for the Oilers? How important is his return?
Yeah, he's looked awesome. Obviously not off to as hot of a start as when he joined the team last year, but 7 shots in his very first game. So he came out just kind of doing the same thing he does before. He always just throws pucks on net, which I love about him. And then hasn't lost that edge at all either. You kind of seen some stuff that he was maybe returning a bit earlier than he originally had planned. And I think he'd even said he wasn't quite 100%, but he felt good enough to go. And then you see in that Tampa game right away, he gets hit by Kucherov, doesn't like it, kind of goes after him. And you're almost kind of thinking to yourself, don't drop the gloves or anything. But again, that's just kind of the player he is. So it's nice to see that there's no hesitancy on his end. He's kind of just getting right back to it, and the offense will come. Obviously, he's just too good of a player, and once he kind of gets more reps on those top lines again, he was kind of eased back in right away. But I expect him to be huge down the stretch.
Do you have any concerns at all about the fact that he does get into those mix-ups with Tampa? I know there were some comments made during the broadcast saying that they've told him don't fight, and I'm torn between the two, right? Like, you need him not necessarily to fight, but you need him to be able to if he has to, and if he feels like the one guy on the ice or the guy on the team that can do that. But I do also at the same time wonder, is his wrist and arm and his hand able to do that? I don't know. I mean, should he be on the ice if he can't fight? Like, I'm not suggesting I want to see him fight all the time, but the ability to, like, is he as effective a player if our players are like, he's not going to fight. He might push a little, but he's not going to fight. He wouldn't risk it. Like, is that at all worrisome to you? It's a weird one for me. I'm torn halfway on both sides.
I don't think so, just because even before, like, he was a guy that would fight, but it's not like he's a guy going out there every game and doing it. And I think, like you said, he's more effective for the Oilers when he's on the ice. Obviously, you like that he is able to stick up for teammates and be that physical guy, but they kind of have a new guy now that can do that a bit too. And I was going to get your thoughts. You brought him up earlier, but Desharnais, like, I didn't know much about this guy at all. And obviously the points he's putting up, I don't expect to continue over like the stretch, but he's just huge back there and he's played really well, solid defensively. And I'm curious kind of what he might be like as a fighter. I know he done some when he was down in the minors and put up some penalty minutes and all that. And that's another guy that could kind of step in with Costin and guys like that maybe take that pressure off of Kane a bit.
He reminds me, and I'm not, people don't jump on me for this, but he reminds me of Zdeno Chara. He's not as good, and Zdeno Chara is unbelievable. His career and his legacy. I am not comparing Vincent Desharnais to Zdeno Chara. What I am saying, he's kind of got that size. He's kind of got the physical build. He sort of has that intimidation factor about him, even if he doesn't actually have to fight, where you're kind of like, that's a big dude. Yeah. Like, do I want to? And you're waiting for the moment that he does. And if he does, and he works the first person that he fights, he's going to have that Chara rep, right? Because Chara had that rep around the league. Like, he didn't fight all that often, but when he did, you better be ready, because he had long reach and heavy hands, and he could really nail you. And Vincent Desharnais has all those qualities. Now, I've yet to see him fight. I haven't watched him in the minors with Bakersfield doing any of that, so I can't speak to his fighting ability. But the size of this guy and what looks to be some pretty good offensive skill, what I like the most is that I just don't notice him making mistakes. And that his mental attitude, those are the two things I really like about him. One, he seems pretty solid. You don't look at him and go, oh my gosh. He had one play in the last game where he kind of coughed it up, but then he hustles right back to get it again. But he's just saying all the right things too, right? Like, he's just like, I've been waiting 10 years for this opportunity. I'm not going to blow it. Like, his head's in the right place. They showed the clips of him, like, doing his mental drills where he's looking around and whatever he's looking at, following the puck in his imagination or whatever he's doing. I don't really know, but he's just kind of got that attitude about him. Like, you have this feeling he's not going anywhere. Like, he knows he's here. He's going to do everything he can to stay here, whether that means fight or play extra minutes or do whatever he's got to do. In an ideal situation, you want him in your third pairing. But if he can chip in, like he's chipping in, I mean, they might have found a gold mine later in the rounds there. Do you think it changes the way they approach the trade deadline? Like, we're going to move in that direction now. Does a guy like Desharnais change how the Oilers approach what they were planning on doing? Because all of a sudden they've found this, like, it's like found money, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's too small of a sample size. Like, obviously he's a feel-good story and he has played really well. And I'm not suggesting that he won't continue that for the remainder of the season, but I think if they were as confident that he would have been this good from the get-go, they would have brought him up earlier than they did. Obviously, I know he was a bit hurt down earlier in the year, like for training camp and all that, but I just think that the fact that they kind of gave him the shot later, even like last season, he didn't get called up. So I do think he's played really well, and I'm not saying that he's not going to continue that, but I don't think that should change their approach of adding a blue liner at the deadline. I think that's still a huge thing that Holland needs to work on getting done.
Okay, well, then let me ask you this. So if Desharnais is not the guy who convinces you to hold pat or stay where you are or not give up too much to get that defenseman, what about Philip Broberg? Because I believe, you said, why didn't they call him up earlier? I think it was because they wanted to get a good look at Philip Broberg. They wanted to get a good look at Markus Niemelainen. They felt maybe Niemelainen is not quite there yet. Broberg seems to be coming on really solidly. His game has really picked it up, and I think it has a lot to do with his health. He seems to be looking like he's ready to go. Again, smaller sample size than the Oilers probably wanted, but I think they're going to play him as much as they can up until March 3rd to kind of figure out what they've got here. Does Broberg change your opinion on this? Like the way that he's played, if he continues to play this well over the next, say, 4 weeks, do you then go, well, maybe we don't need to add this player because we've got not just Broberg playing really well, but we've got Desharnais in the back here in the event that Broberg does sort of slip a little bit towards the end. Does his play change your mind?
It does change it in the sense of like before when there was talks about them potentially moving him for Jakob Chychrun or whoever else, I was certainly on board with it at the time. And I'm not necessarily gone away from it, but he's definitely making me think a lot more. Like he's looked really good the last, 10, 15 games now. And obviously he's still only 21 years old. So there's a chance like he's going to continue to get better, probably develop into that top 4 defenseman. So it's tough with these young guys because you don't know when exactly that's going to be. Like, is he going to continue this crazy trajectory he's on right now, or will it stale off for a bit? And then again, we talked about with McDavid and Draisaitl kind of on those contracts, but right now he's playing phenomenal. But I do still think I would feel a lot more confident if they were able to add another defenseman, whoever that may be, not necessarily trading Broberg or probably not trading him, but just for that extra depth in case of injury or if both those guys are to struggle in the next few months here.
So who gets the bump then? Because if you like the way Broberg is played and Brett Kulak is really the only other guy, because you're not going to move Darnell Nurse out on that left side to do any of this, is Brett Kulak all of a sudden the guy you bump, or do you still bump Broberg? And the reason I'm asking this question is because the Oilers have been rumored to be pretty heavy in on this Vladislav Gavirkov out of Columbus, which fans are going to get to see probably for the first time closely. Like if they're paying attention to the rumors and they know there's going to be a lot of people that say, oh yeah, get Gavrikov, but they've not really watched Columbus very often, right? Like why would you pay attention to that guy if you're not really a Columbus Blue Jackets fan until all of a sudden Columbus is playing Edmonton. Edmonton's rumored to be in on this guy. Now you're going to watch him really closely, but he's got term, potentially if the Oilers trade for him because he's a pending UFA, but the cost that is going to be associated to picking this guy up means you're probably trading for this guy as more than a rental, and you're looking at and probably talking to him about a contract extension, which bumps Philip Broberg out of the lineup unless you trade a guy like Brett Kulak. So who goes? So you got 3 people here, right? You got Broberg, potentially Gavrikov. You got Brett Kulak. Like who goes?
Now, when you put it that way, it's tougher. But
yeah, you know what I mean? Like that's the delay because
yeah.
I was with you a month ago. I'm doing this trade all day long. But now all of a sudden, Broberg's playing really well. Brett Kulak's still a pretty decent value contract. Yeah, I still think he's above his head on the second pairing, but like, I don't know who you move. And I certainly don't want to trade for a guy like Jakob Chychrun, even though his value is really good, because if you do, you've got 2 more seasons where you cannot do anything with Broberg, right? You got to move somebody to get Broberg in there. And so you add a player. If you're going to get a rental in Gavrikov, great. But the price has got to come down for the rental. Otherwise, you're giving so much away for a guy you're only going to have for a few months.
Yeah. Well, as far as the Chychrun thing goes, too, I think if they are to bring him in, I think Broberg's likely gone. But the Gavrikov thing, like maybe you look at it and say that's not the guy we need with that high of a price tag. Like there are some other defensemen out there on expiring deals that would go for cheaper than that. So maybe you just bring in a guy that can kind of come in and out of the lineup if injuries are there. Like you can rely on him to fill in on that third pairing role. Because like you said, all you see, it's a heavy price to pay for a guy like Gavrikov, who, like you said, I don't really know a ton about him. So he could come in and be an excellent top 4 for the remainder of the season. But then if they happen to have a short playoff exit or whatever, then what? And then you have a guy like Broberg, a young guy, not getting those reps in, kind of sitting up in the press box. And then it's kind of all for nothing. So it is a tricky situation. I still wouldn't mind seeing them kind of add a guy that can jump in and really solidify that top 4. Because I think once the playoffs started, really kind of then the pressure is really on these young defensemen. Like, are they going to be able to step up to the plate? And that's really kind of just a guess, almost like it was when you entered the season with this blue line. So I wouldn't mind seeing them add one, but it is definitely a trickier situation than it was a month ago.
Yeah, all I can say is you got to make sure you know what you're getting. Right? Like if you're going to go out and you're going to give up a bunch of assets for Gavrikov, or you're going to give up a bunch of assets for Jakob Chychrun, or you're going to give up assets and you go crazy and you try to get Erik Karlsson, or you go lower and you try to get a Radko Gudas out of Florida, or whatever the situation, know what you're getting. Because if you don't and you misjudge this, it's going to be something that could come back to bite you, not just this season, but like for the people you bump to fit that person in there. I forgot exactly where I was going next. Oh yeah. What would you do in terms of Kailer Yamamoto here? Because one of the things that might happen to have to happen before the deadline is that the Oilers might have to move out some money. Now, I'm hearing that the Yamamoto injury might be more serious than people think, and that when he's due back, I think it's February 10th or something off LTIR, that might be a positive like outcome here, that this might not be when he actually comes back. And if he doesn't come back, it kind of solves the Oilers salary cap issue. But what if he does come back? What if he is ready to go? The Oilers got to move some money, right? They don't have enough to fit everybody onto the roster, especially with Evander Kane back off LTR. Who are you moving? Like, because the word we're hearing is Warren Foegele, Derek Ryan, Jesse Puljujarvi. Those are the three that are being dangled. All three are playing pretty well, except for Puljujarvi, who's not in the lineup on a regular basis. What are you doing if you're Ken Holland?
So I think, like, based on performance, I would say Puljujarvi. At the same time, like, they don't have a ton of right wing depth on this team. A couple weeks ago, I probably would have said no problem with Foegele, but then he's been playing a lot better as of late. He's looked really good, actually. So then you have Derek Ryan, who I think is a valuable player to this team. I think like he does things well. He really doesn't do anything wrong, I think, is what I like about him. You kind of know what you're going to get from him on a nightly basis. He's been one of those guys that can chip in with secondary scoring on a team that has struggled with it. But I don't know. I think it's tough to get rid of that right shot, right winger and Puljujarvi when you don't have much else there. And like Fogel's been impressing me more and more as of late. So to me, Ryan's the odd man out, but I don't know. How do you feel?
Well, I'm not sure that I would move Ryan simply because of his contract. I think he, like you said, there is a limit to what he can do, right? Like, he just offensively in the top, whatever, he's not going to be there for you, but he will give you some added scoring if you need it. He can penalty kills. He can play center or wing. He fits wherever you put him. And he has no problem coming out of the lineup in it. His number is good. If he signs again next year, which I think the Oilers are actually interested in doing, it's probably league minimum. You know, like, he's a guy that you're going to need as some of these contracts come in and you need to save a little money. Puljujarvi being at $3 million, I think you have to probably try to move him. And if you can, and somebody's willing to take him without you having to give a sweetener to move that deal, you probably do it. To be honest with you, I'm not sure that I wouldn't move Kailer Yamamoto. I don't know if there's a market for him. I'm not sure if he's, injury free enough to be moved. But I think that is starting to be a little concerning for me in terms of his size and his inconsistency, his ability to stay healthy. I just don't know if you want to go there or not. Here I have a question about Puljujarvi, though. Let's say, for example, he's your guy and he's the one that you try to move out because of his $3 million. What if no team is willing to take him without a sweetener? Do you risk waiving him? Like, if that's the only way you can move that money off the roster, do you think the Oilers would risk putting him on waivers? And if they do you think he clears?
So I think, I think if they were going to trade him, just because I think they've tried, and I think there's next to no value out there.
Well,
so
that's what we're hearing. They've tried like crazy.
Yeah, so if they did get something back, it would be not much value at all. Like, whether it's another kind of struggling middle-ish aged prospect or just a late pick, like, I don't think they're getting much back there. So I don't think that they would have much of a problem putting him on waivers, because it doesn't make much of a difference if you're getting, say, a 4th, 5th round pick back as opposed to nothing. It's nothing. That's not that big of a difference if you need to move that money. As far as getting claimed on waivers, like, I would think so. Like, I would think there's a struggling team out there that would have the cap space to do it and take a chance on him. It's I don't know, you get him for 20, 30 some games on kind of a freebie and then reevaluate at the end of the offseason if you want to re-sign him or not. But again, like, he seems like he has no value, which is kind of crazy to me just given his age. So I really don't know, but I do think that management would be okay putting him on waivers if it came down to it.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea if you clear or not. Like, people who support Jesse Puljujarvi, and I do like Jesse Puljujarvi, especially the analytics community that is like really bullish on this guy, will tell you all day long he'll get claimed by somebody, right? A Buffalo will pick him up, or an Arizona would try, or what. I have no idea. The money at $3 million right now with the way that the salary cap is going. Like, would Seattle bring them in, trying to maybe see if they're getting a freebie out of this trade deadline without having to give up anything? Like, Maybe. I have no idea though. Like, it's really hard because that money is so tight and it's so valuable to have $3 million in cap space. And unless you're a team that's just out of it and you want to talk to him over the summer and see if you can get him signed as a restricted free agent for a couple of years or whatever, I don't know. I honestly have no idea if he would clear or not. Like, it's pretty crazy to think that might be where we're at now. If the Oilers are looking at trading him and every team is like, no, you either take this guy back or you got to give us a second round or a third to move this. If the Oilers don't just go, well, screw that, we're just going to waive him and see what happens, right? If he doesn't get cleared, they free $3 million and they get away with a player for free. If he does clear, they can do whatever they need to do with him and kind of move that money. So it's really tough. Like, I don't know. Like,
it is crazy. Like you were saying, like, it was just at the first half of last season that it seemed like he was taking another step, right? Like, before he got COVID there, he was really starting to put up some big numbers, granted alongside Connor McDavid, but that confidence is just completely shot now.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that, like, and it's hard because Woodcroft has said to him, like, your play is not the reason you're coming out of the lineup. Evander Kane being back is why you're coming out of the lineup. And he came back in when Yamark wasn't feeling well, but like, he doesn't get a ton of minutes. So it's not like he's being played a lot because of the way that he's playing and the fact that he's in the line. Like, I do believe that there's just not a place for him necessarily on this team, especially with other players playing really well. If guys like Yamark are stepping up and Costin's playing well, and you've got, other players like Dylan Holloway starts to produce, like, I don't know where you fit Jesse Puljujarvi, and not at $3 million. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Okay. Let's close things off by making a prediction here on the game tonight, Columbus, Edmonton. Do you believe the Oilers get 7 in a row here? And what's the score if you do?
Yeah, I mean, just given the Blue Jackets struggles this year, and I think that is one that you'd expect them to pick up. So I will take the Oilers in this one. I'll say 5-2 final.
I was going to go 5-1. I think the Oilers are going to have a good game. My only concern is that they've had some time off, and that doesn't typically bode well for Edmonton when they've got too much time to sit around. They're a really good team when they're on a roll and they're playing really solid and they're feeling their oats. They've had a few days to sit down and now think about their streak, and they often sometimes play down to their opponents. Let's hope the mentality of this group and the way that they're playing and the way that they're feeling about their game and what they're doing is going to carry over into this, because they really only have the 2 games and they have a lot of opponents coming up here that they should beat. Like, they really should be taking advantage of these games, and let's hope it's in their head to do so, because you do not want to just relax and because anybody can beat you. Like, that's just the reality, right? Even Columbus, who just doesn't have a lot going for them right now, they can beat you. So sure. I still think the Oilers come out heavy. I think they get a good start. I'm going to go 5-1. I think the Oilers are going to win it. I'm thinking McDavid's getting 4 points.
There you go.
Yeah, I just can't believe how on fire this guy is. It's incredible. So anyway, Colton, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're going to have some fun watching the game tonight, and then checking things out on Saturday, I think, is when they play again. So we have some time to digest what's going on between these games. Everybody else, check out the hockeywriters.com for your news and rumors, Oilers talk between Colton and myself, and a lot of other great writers. And there's other great content on the YouTube channel too, so check that out. We'll talk to everybody in the next one. Oilers Overtime. Talk to you guys later.